Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from Popcross Studios, Fear of the Demon Hunter, Episode 4, Dangers of the Demonitrix. When we last left off, Fear herself and the crew landed back at the base of the Demon Hunters, and now it's time to see how the plan goes awry, because when we last left off, Fear was also terrified as all hell. So, let's hop in and see what happens.
I'll begin with a recap, but if you want to start this series from the beginning, the playlist is linked in the description. Previously, on Fear of the Demon Hunters, Vivian Sabraya has made an uncomfortable arrangement with the former Demon Queen, Fear herself, aka Arava. Fear had originally planned to infiltrate the Predator Coalition of Demon Hunters, disguised as a 15-year-old girl named Riva Arvos, to steal a powerful artifact she'd once created called the Demonitrix.
That's correct.
This can allow the user to channel the powers of any demon Fear has created, though it's very difficult to use. She intended to use it both to kill the demon general hunting her, Zuphiathan, as well as to kill the Archon demons, rampaging across the multiverse in physical forms she gave them before being betrayed by them, and having most of her own powers stolen. Vivian changed that plan. Viv had every reason to hate Fear, as Vivian was turned into a demon by Fear in the past, and in her form as the Hornet Demon Himenopoda, Viv did some awful things that she still feels the need to redeem herself for. Viv got the sense after getting one up on Fear in a fight that the Demon Queen regretted her own past actions. Vivian has agreed with Fear that they will both get the Demonitrix, but Fear will then teach Viv how to use it. Things seemed to get more complicated as fellow demon hunter Jax discovered what was going on between Viv and Fear, but he grudgingly agreed to help, regretting how he'd treated past Coalition member, Koshmara Naroi, when she was fighting for the Coalition using her own demon powers. In the hopes of encouraging Fear to seek...
I wonder what demon she's based off of. If I had to guess what the way her form is, I'd say the fear of natural disasters.
Redemption, Viv has agreed to act as though Fear is starting on solid ground with her, with no history of digging herself into a pit of horrible past actions. Fear seems to have actually taken to this offer and hasn't done or said anything horrible since. Will she actually be able to keep that up? We'll find out soon, but a new challenge has arisen, as, while approaching the Coalition headquarters, Fear learned that waiting inside the building are some people from her past who could throw a wrench in the plan. Now enjoy Chapter 4 of Fear of the Demon Hunters.
Let's go!
What is it? Do you know those people? Viv asked through her psychic demon link to Fear. With Tamika and Paul leading them, and Jax and Clayton on her other side, all unaware of the mental conversation, they were only a couple dozen feet from reaching the Coalition building. Professor Dresden Oakland and Alexis Jones could have been waiting just inside the doors. Fear responded,
"Of course I do. I fought Koshmara's whole team when I was making the Archon Demon's physical forms. But worse than that, I've known Dresden for decades. Before he had a change of heart and started working with them, we were friends. I mean...
Wait, what?
Sort of friends.
Oh.
I was kind of manipulating him into helping me and planned to have him killed when we were done. But he basically betrayed me too, so we're kind of even, right?"
Forgetting that Fear could hear inside her head, Viv thought, "She's really testing this whole solid ground thing." Fear growled,
"The point is he'll recognize me. I mean, he never saw this form, but if anyone could figure it out, it's him. And if he does,
I mean, yeah, that is kind of his thing. I mean, it's Dresden frickin' Oakland. Dude was one of the head researchers at the frickin' SCP Foundation. And so, yeah, no, it's obvious he'd be the one to recognize you like that.
I mean, I'm not exactly at the top of Alexis's Christmas card list either."
Viv nodded. She got an idea pretty quickly, but she was actually kind of curious to talk to this Dresden guy. She knew of him, since Koshmara's whole team was pretty famous around the Coalition, but she hadn't realized he was essentially a reformed villain who'd worked with Fear.
Demon
Hey,
hippo.
Tamika, Paul, Viv asked the couple in front of her. "Could Jax take Riva to her room now? She's pretty exhausted still and could use a nap without the risk of demons interrupting." Clayton whipped his head to the side. "What, she didn't sleep enough on the flights? We need to start strategizing how to use her alleged tracking abilities to hunt Zuphiathan." Tamika rocked her head back. "Well, if Clayton hates the idea, then of course, you get all the sleep you need, child." Viv looked over at Jax, who was giving her an angry, questioning look as if to say, "Why do I have to take her?" He hadn't been in on their mental conversation.
Let's go.
She
Trust
replied
us.
with a look that essentially said, "Sorry." Paul told Jax the room number for Riva. They were all just about to head into the doors, and through the tinted glass, Viv could see two distorted figures that she was pretty sure weren't Coalition members. Jax, why don't you walk along the outside? Show Riva the grounds on the way?" Viv said, trying to hide the desperation in her voice. He looked confused, but just sighed. "Sure."
So there's apparently a lot going on with that Demonitrix transformation, right? Because I'm seeing in the snake, I'm seeing the hippo.
"Let's go,
Gonna
kid."
see some others.
Before they left and separated their demon link, Viv thought to Fear, "Remember, solid ground, so be nice to Jax."
Sure, I love making small talk with guys who want to bash my head in with a bat.
Fear thought as she marched off quickly, getting away from the
that's
doors
good.
as Tamika swung them open. "Jones, keeping that crazy team of universe-hopping super weirdos in check?" The girl she was addressing was quite short, but clearly a little older than Viv, in red and black combat armor. More strangely, though, she had 3 different colored floating rings hovering around her head, with odd markings and symbols on them. Alexis replied, "As crazy as they are, they tend to keep themselves in check. I just have to point them in the right direction now and then." She
Thankfully.
responded with a grin, but that grin faded as she glanced over at Clayton. "This is a closed meeting, Costas." He growled and marched off. "I wasn't looking to have a chat with the Grim Reaper anyway. Don't say hi to Mara for me."
Just the Reaper.
Even people from other universes didn't like Clayton. Though, with this team being close with Koshmara, it made sense that they would know all about her ex and how he treated her. Viv then noticed that the other visitor, Professor
right.
Dresden Oakland, was looking at her curiously. He himself was quite strange to her. He was clearly older, though it was hard to tell how much, as his skin looked like it was made of flaky gray stone. Viv looked from him to Alexis, then to
with some surprisingly pink bright cracks underneath.
Tamika. "Oh, if this is a closed meeting, I can go too." Before Viv could walk away, Tamika wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "Oh, Final Girl here can stick around. She's one of our best, and just took out 2 demons while falling out of an airplane and rescuing 2 other people." Viv felt awkward having that mentioned. She didn't want to face more questions of how she pulled that off, as keeping her demon powers secret made the whole thing sound pretty impossible. Alexis looked Viv up and down. "Wow, that's impressive. Why do they call you Final Girl?" Alexis reached out her hand, and Viv shook it. Alexis's grip was so firm it almost hurt. "My name is actually Vivian Sabraya, but some people call me Final Girl because I've survived some really difficult missions."
That is true.
Tamika smacked her on the back. "She's being modest. She's survived some of the craziest demon attacks in the history of the Coalition, even some missions nobody else survived. Like the Final Girl in a horror movie. Plus, she's managed to drag some of our fellow hunters straight out of hell, too." The praise felt nice, until Viv heard, "I imagine your demon abilities help you in that regard."
Damn, Dresden! 5 seconds and you already could tell! Holy crap!
Vivian's heart stopped. She turned to Professor Oakland again with a horrified look, but then realized his mouth hadn't opened. "My apologies, I had no business demon linking with you without your permission," she heard inside her head.
Holy frickin' damn, Oakland! Warn a person before you do that!
He held out his hand, this time speaking out loud for all to hear. "I concur, that is quite impressive, especially for someone presumably with no supernatural abilities to speak of," he said, despite clearly knowing that she had to have some kind of demon powers. She took his hand, and despite its stony material, his grip was surprisingly gentle. Tamika shook her head. "Nope, Viv here is an all-natural human. She don't need no fancy powers to be a total demon destroyer. No offense to you wacky super people." "Very interesting," Dresden said quietly. "Now, as for the purpose of our visit, we have 2 important pieces of information to discuss. The first may be particularly interesting to you all. We have surprisingly been able to turn one of the Archon demons onto our side, which in its own right is a long story, but more
Oh yeah, go check that out if you haven't. And I actually already did check it out. So you don't have to ask me.
Useful to you all is the knowledge that this Archon granted us in regards to Fear herself." Vivian was instantly intrigued, but also terrified. What had she been thinking when Dresden linked with her? How had he done that? Were his abilities demon-based as well? He seemed like he was being quiet about her demon powers, but what if he... found out she and Fear were working together, he'd probably be a lot less cool about her secret then. Dresden continued. Arava apparently confronted the Archons about not following her alleged moral code, so the one called Psychoparadelict stole the majority of her abilities from her.
That's right.
We're not exactly certain what abilities remain, but she is now unable to leave this dimension, and she is certainly not able to create any new demons.
And that's also true. From what I could tell, the only powers he left her with, if I remember correctly, is immortality, as in she can't die from aging, and slight tentacle creation. Aside from that, I think that's it.
Tamika put her fists to her waist. Huh, guess that nasty little ghoul got some of her just desserts. Then no new demons, huh? Looks like we all might be out of a job soon. Viv was looking for any excuse to leave, but also wanted to hear more. She kept trying to avoid thinking about Fear in case Dresden was still in her head, but that just made her think about her more. She also wondered how long it would take for Tamika to put together that Riva was Fear, now that she knew Fear had lost most of her powers. Tamika may have had a soft spot for scared kids, but she wasn't an idiot. As soon as Clayton heard this info, he'd figure it out for sure. Dresden went on. Yes, well, I would not begin your job hunt too promptly, as her demon generals can presumably all still make new demons. It is also entirely likely that Arava will be seeking a way to get revenge on Psychoparadelict, as she is not one to let something like that go. Though we are also interested in taking her into custody if you do locate her. Tamika
probably want to take her simply to put her into the Orc Foundation. You know, redeem and all that.
Crossed her arms. You saying you ain't gonna let us chop her head off and dance around her corpse after everything she's done? Dresden nodded. It is perfectly understandable that you'd want to do so, but we are well underway building what we call the Redemption Arc Support Foundation.
Ah, there it is.
RAS Foundation. That is the other piece of information we'd like to share. Viv's concern slightly slipped away upon hearing that name, especially the word redemption. Dresden continued. The intention of the organization is to take powerful and dangerous beings and entities from across the multiverse who have done awful things with their abilities, keep them contained, and endeavor to help encourage them to seek redemption of their ill acts. While wanting revenge on some of these beings, such as Arava, is understandable, if they can be encouraged to do good with their abilities, then the multiverse may be a better place for them remaining in it, with new guidance moving forward. Viv immediately jumped in. And you think Fear has enough good in her to be redeemed? She instantly felt suspicious for having asked, but she also knew it wasn't an unreasonable question. His tone softened slightly. Many would likely, very understandably, say not, but it would also be very reasonable for my own past actions to never be forgiven, especially by the likes of someone such as Ms. Jones here. Alexis crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. Yeah, if Dresden can be convinced to start dedicating his life to helping people after everything he's done, then who knows, maybe even someone as awful as Fear herself can too.
Exactly.
Dresden nodded.
I mean, you left a living example right next to you. So yeah, that was your answer. Some evil can be redeemed.
Biggest hurdle in my eyes is convincing someone to believe they should seek redemption. From personal experience, I can tell you that it is very easy to convince yourself the awful things you are doing are for the benefit of others, in which case you'd feel no need to seek redemption. If one does then see the error of their ways, the following steps don't necessarily become simple, as falling off course is easy enough to do. But that is why the most important element is the consistent encouragement of other mature and good people around them. People who believe they can do genuine good and help show them the way, which is the intent of our foundation. Viv was half tempted to just give Fear up right then and there. Maybe this foundation could help turn her around way faster than this whole Demonitrix.
Hey, Oakland, what would you say if someone was already kind of convincing her of that? And would you be more surprised or would you be more worried? Well, I would have to see the work done myself to give it a judge. Good, she's just down the hall. What?
Explain. But it seemed like Vivian had actually managed to gain some trust from Fear with this whole solid ground move. If she threw that away now, Fear may just feel betrayed all over again and lose all interest in doing good. Soon after Dresden's response, Alexis received an alert on her watch. Dresden, they need me to take out an Archon's general. He nodded and raised his own watch. They used those watch devices to transport to other dimensions. They'd given one to Tamika as well, which she occasionally wore. Viv had always been curious to try going to another dimension, but had never thought to ask. Even Tamika only used the device to communicate with Koshmara's team, not for interdimensional travel. As they were both about to leave, Viv heard a voice in her head again. Well, it is not any of my own business. One of my wiser allies would likely advise that concealing your true identity does more harm than revealing it would. Viv wasn't sure she'd be able to communicate.
If anything, I would probably reveal it to one person at a time. Like, say, the leader of the Foundation.
Back, but tried, and surprisingly, her message went through clearly. I did really awful things when I first became a demon. I don't think a lot of people here would forgive me for it. The things you've done likely pale in comparison to what I've done.
Yeah.
There will always be those who do not forgive you, but the honest, genuine acceptance from those who do will likely make the honesty worthwhile. Dresden and Alexis both teleported away promptly after he sent that thought. Vivian wanted to believe he was right, but she had enough other things to think about. Even though she hadn't admitted to her plan with Fear, she felt slightly vindicated in having made it. If even Dresden and Koshmara's team thought Fear could be redeemed, then that felt like pretty firm evidence that it was possible. Viv sped off towards her room, but then doubled back outside, ran around the property, and entered the west wing, where Fear's room was. She walked past rows of doors before turning a corner and seeing Jax leaning up against a wall, outside Riva's room, reading a very early chapter in a book on the philosophy of Stoicism. He saw her coming and clapped it shut. Finally, what was that? Why did you go talk to them?
Yeah, that's what I want to know too. Did you rat me out?
Viv heard in her head, despite Fear being inside the room. Viv opened the door and gestured Jax inside. Riva was standing in the middle of the room with her arms crossed. Relax, Riva, I didn't tell them anything, but it would have been helpful to know that Dresden can demon link. Fear's eyes shot open wide. Oh, right, I forgot I gave him that power, but then blocked him from using it on me most of the time so he wouldn't get anything out of me I didn't want him to know. So what, did he find out about me? I bet not, or he'd be here to kill me. Vivian sighed. No, but he does know I'm a demon. Luckily, he kept quiet, but we also need to get a move on this plan of ours fast. Koshmara's team found out you got your powers taken away, and Dresden told Tamika. It's only a matter of time before someone puts together who you are. People here have seen you as Fear herself, and you're like the exact same height and build as Riva. Also, Dresden doesn't want to kill you. He wants to take you into custody at a place called the Redemption Arc Support Foundation. He wants to help you redeem yourself.
That's right.
Her eyes widened again, but then promptly narrowed. Yeah, right. That's gotta be a lie. They'll probably get me there and either kill me or lock me up in a little isolated hole for the rest of my life. I don't think so.
Okay, I can understand being skeptical because it's, again, Oakland, but still.
He seemed really genuine, Viv replied. Fear stomped forward. So do it then. Turn me in. Rat me out. I bet you'll get some big prize for being the one who caught the vicious demon queen, right? And everyone will just forget about all the kids you murdered, Himanapoda. Viv's teeth clenched as she saw Jax's eyes shoot over to her.
Come on now.
She ignored it for a moment and stared angrily at Fear. You were on solid ground, Riva, but you're digging a new hole right now. Do you want to stop or do you want to bury yourself again? I'm still keeping my end of this deal, so what are you doing? Riva's lip trembled angrily, and Viv couldn't tell if she was about to snap again or start crying. Fine. I'm sorry. So, what now?
Good.
If someone is going to figure out who I am soon, then we've got to get moving, right? This place is huge. How are we going to find the Demonitrix? I know where it is, Jax muttered.
Perfect.
Both Riva and Viv whipped their heads towards him. Viv asked, You do? Is it in a vault? Is it guarded? He sighed. It is in a vault, and in a way it's guarded, but I have the password, and it's not guarded against humans, so I can get it. Viv tried to look excited and was grateful that Jax wasn't asking questions about what Fear had frustratingly revealed about her past as Himanapoda. That's great. Is anyone going to know if we take it? He shrugged. I'm pretty sure they only send someone to check on it once a month or so. I don't know when the last time they checked was, so we should probably put it back between using it just in case. But once we get it out, only Viv and I can touch it. He shot Riva an angry look.
That was kind
She
of
rolled
already
her eyes
agreed
at
on.
him. It'd be a lot safer for me to use it, but fine. Whatever, let's just go. Jax told Vivian where the elevator was that they needed to catch, and she did a quick sweep of the site. Tamika, Paul, and Clayton were nowhere to be seen. As usual, there were other hunters and people who worked on site walking around and chatting, but nobody who would recognize Riva yet. Viv returned to the room and got Jax in fear. They tried to walk with her between them, blocking her as best they could from being seen. A few people said hi or nodded at them, and every time they did, Viv's stomach sunk. Terrified, they asked what they were up to or who the kid with them was. They made it to the elevator and got inside.
Well, you can easily just say, oh, new member.
Once they were in,
That's it.
Jax hit the door closed button. After that, his fingers scrolled down past 3 buttons to floors below them. Then, tapped his knuckle twice on a blank panel under the last button. A little latch popped open, and behind it was another button. Under it, sloppily written on tape, were the words, Sub-Basement Storage. He pressed it, then closed the latch. The elevator descended farther than Viv had gone in the base before, and opened to a dark warehouse-type site that went on for longer than the building above reached. There were
Damn.
rows and rows of jagged metal shelves with boxes and tools and paperwork on them. Jax walked with a clear heading as Viv and Riva followed. Viv asked, Has this place always been here? Why didn't I know about it?
No idea.
Jax shrugged. It's not really a big secret or anything. When the Coalition started, everything was done down here. As world governments started covertly giving the Coalition funding to quietly hunt down demons in their countries, the organization got enough money to build a proper building on top of it. And eventually everyone decided working underground with no sunlight sucked. So this level just became a
honestly,
storage
yeah.
site, and they kept it quiet in case they needed to secretly store anything really dangerous. Like this. He stopped in a corner of the room and tapped his foot on the ground. Riva and Viv didn't see anything, until Jax knelt down and slammed his fist twice on one of the tiles. Like the elevator latch, it sprang up. He folded it over and revealed a keypad. He punched in 10 numbers, then stepped back. A space of 12 tiles
10 numbers, 10 demons. Do you get it? Do you get it?
in a rectangle popped
Try
up
not to
slightly,
yell and yell as a
and mist
deal.
bellowed around them. Viv felt sick from the smell of it, as did Riva, but Jax seemed fine. A large, thick door opened from the floor, and beneath it there was a pool of water, glowing green thanks to a crystal sitting at the bottom of the tank. Riva nodded. Huh, that's kinda clever, I guess. Viv looked at her. What do you mean? I don't get it. Water doesn't scare off demons. Jax took off his vest, then unbuttoned his shirt. Viv
Holy
figured he
water.
was trying to not get his clothes wet, but wasn't sure if she should look away. She then noticed 3 massive scars running along his
I would probably guess it's holy water.
lean, muscled stomach. She'd been there when he'd gotten those, when he'd attempted to protect Avery from the demon Cryoarot. He lay down and reached his arm into the tank. It's a special kind of holy water. It was made by a priest
Called
called
it.
Father Salvatar. A family brought their child to him in the 70s, claiming he was being attacked in the night by a demon. The child slept in the father's church that night, hoping that it'd stave off the demon, but since these things were made by her and not Satan, that didn't do much. It still got him to attack the kid, but this father's faith that God would protect him was so strong that holy water he'd blessed, I guess essentially qualified as having strong sentimental value. That made it lethal
Yeah?
to demons, and he was able to kill it. The Coalition
Father's
found
love.
out about this and tried to see if other priests had the same ability, but none did. They brought Father Salvatar into the Coalition and made tons of holy water for us. It was a popular weapon for hunters to use for a while, but after he died, we used the rest to store the Demonitrix so that no demons could get to it.
That makes
He
sense.
grabbed the large green gem very gently in his fingertips and raised it, dripping out of the water. He looked like he wanted to drop it immediately, but realized Viv couldn't touch it while it was wet. He grudgingly grabbed his shirt and started drying it off. Trying to distract him from a task he clearly disliked, Viv asked, How did Father Salvatar die?
Old
Jax
age?
looked from Viv to Riva with a snarl. Viv turned to her. Fear was trying not to make eye contact, but after Viv stared for a moment, she finally glanced
Of
back.
course.
Fear crossed her arms. What? You knew who I was when you agreed to work with me, and at the time, making a demon to kill him that looked like the Antichrist and used a burning upside-down cross as a weapon seemed like the right way to handle the situation.
Okay, I have to give
guess,
up props.
Thinking back, it was a little messed up. Viv just shook her head and tried to put that thought out of her mind as she walked around the open vault to Jax. She reached out her hand. All right, Fear. What am I doing with this thing? How do I use it? Fear seemed alarmed. You want to just go for it? Right here, right now?
Yeah, probably not right
Viv
there.
shrugged. Like Jax said, nobody really comes down here. We might as well get a move on as soon as possible. Jax cautiously handed the Demonitrix to her. You're not...
Oh, I just realized this is a one piece.
Scared? Nobody has been able to get this thing to work safely in years. Fear cut in. She is scared. I can practically taste it, the smell is so strong. Viv shot her a look. Quit digging. And yes, I'm terrified, but I'm probably not going to get less scared until I try it. It'll get easier every time, right? Fear shrugged. If you survive, I guess, probably. Thank you for that, Viv said sarcastically, rolling the gem over in her hand. She understood why Jax hadn't liked holding it. A cold chill ran from it into her fingertips. The front face was flat and looked like a rectangle sharply indented in the middle on two opposing sides. On the back, it jutted out into a sharp spike, and Viv hated knowing that that was likely the part she'd have to jab into herself. Fear spoke slightly slower than before as she said, Okay, you know how you took control of your body back after you got turned into Hematopoda? Viv tried to ignore Fear's lack of accountability in the phrasing, and nodded. Fear continued. It'll be like that. There's probably gonna be a few demons that notice as soon as you activate it, and they're gonna try to take control. The only reason I'm sort of okay with you trying this is because you've kinda done this before. Viv hated having to flash back to the worst period of her life for inspiration, but it was slightly encouraging to know it was something she'd overcome once already. Viv was taking a few slow breaths, preparing for what she was about to do. She was about to take off her jacket to expose her arm, when suddenly they all heard a voice ringing through the gem.
Is this a budding invitation I smell? What a lovely surprise.
The Demonitrix shot out of her hand, pierced right through her jacket shoulder and into her flesh. Viv cried out in
That's why it's on the shoulder. Okay.
pain. Then, seconds later, in horror, as her arm started to warp and transform and distort into slime and teeth and tendrils that grew and grew like a rapidly mutating infection. It looked like dozens of different animal and dinosaur demons were transforming and shifting through the growing mass, undulating from Vivian's side.
That's not bad.
Jax backed away in horror.
I was gonna say that's good and that's not bad. Oh no, it's the opposite.
And Fear held her ground, shifting into her demon form and making tendrils appear behind her, ready for a fight.
Zuphiathan? Is that you?
Viv was still helplessly shaking and just watching in terror as her arm grew and moved out of her control. Her legs started to transform next, and she felt an all too familiar feeling, like thousands of hornets crawling all over her body, intermittently stinging her. She just wanted out. She couldn't do this again. She forgot how horrible and paralyzing this feeling was. She could barely focus as a giant hippopotamus-like monster head emerged from the end of the demon mass sprawling from her. The grimly grinning head spoke.
Ah, yes, that's right, my queen.
It grunted sarcastically.
Haven't you been getting my calls? You should really make it easier for your humble subjects to get in touch with you.
The demon's voice even echoed through Vivian's own mouth, and stank like foul sewer water as it spilled from her, making her gag. She wanted to grab the Demonitrix and tear it out of her warped shoulder, but she could do little more with her unmutated fingers than get them to twitch. She couldn't do it. She couldn't take control back. To do so, she knew she had to lean into the feeling of the horrible invisible creatures crawling all over her. She knew that meant feeling them crawling into her mouth and nose and ears, and she couldn't do it again. She just kept resisting, trying to send her mind anywhere but here. Fear lashed 2 tendrils at the hippo demon head, and he easily chomped through them and tore them out of the ground, making them go limp.
Oh, come on, Mama. I just want to discuss some new management options for demons.
That was a
now
little
that
much.
you're not so fearable as you once were. I mean, what will the other demon generals think when I tell them you're working with the enemy just to try and keep yourself alive,
You're too scared of them to do anything like that, and killing me won't make you more powerful than them. Fear growled, making more tendrils and uselessly lashing them at the demon mass.
Of course I will. You underestimate the clout that comes with killing the head honcho. I kill you, the other generals fear me, that makes me more powerful, and next thing you know, the leading cause of death in the world becomes animal demon devourings. I always thought you played things too small. I'm gonna franchise out a heck of a lot more than you ever did.
The laugh rumbled out of Viv, quaking her whole body and making her tense up even further. She couldn't handle this feeling anymore.
Here's a quick question though. How the hell did Leviathan get a hold on, channel his energy into the Demonitrix? How?
And suddenly, she didn't have to. She realized all feeling was gone, no good or bad. She also noticed she was floating over the horrid scene and feeling as though she could see the whole thing from every angle.
Oh, that's not good.
She'd been in this state before, and while the horrible sensations were gone, she knew that watching horror unfold wasn't much better than being in it. Jax suddenly called out to her, looking at the now vacant face of her physical form. Vivian, are you okay? She didn't reply because she couldn't. She wasn't in there anymore. The demon turned to Jax.
Oh, did you bring me a snack? Gifts won't keep me from killing you, but they're certainly appreciated.
Jax gripped his baseball bat. Viv, I don't want to hurt you. The massive demon heads thrust towards Jax, but not faster than Fear's tendrils, which snatched him and dragged him down one of the aisles. Fear suddenly looked up in the air around her.
Vivian, seriously, if you're out of body right now, you need to get back in there. It's your body. Don't let this Goosebumps wannabe win.
The massive heads turned and swung towards Fear. She snatched the hippo mouth by the upper and lower jaw, but they still managed to snap at her, pushing her backwards. A snake head emerged from above it and thrust at her next. Fear dove to the side, tackling boxes out of the way as she rolled into the next aisle over. Vivian knew she had to help. She could feel the loose connection to her body, but as soon as she went back in there, she'd feel every horrible sensation she could imagine and have to lean into it even more. She suddenly felt like she wasn't worthy of redemption after all. She was given a chance to do better than the last time a demon form had taken over her, and she couldn't do it. She could hear the screams of her past act all over again. Children were screaming for safety from Himenopoda, and Viv was too afraid to save them. That is, until she realized the screams weren't from her past. The demon mass had sprouted claws and snatched Riva by her arms and legs. She was thrashing and writhing and screaming, trying to get free, but it was no use.
Vivian, please don't let him get me. I can't die yet.
The demon chuckled.
Oh, listen to you. Going out without an ounce of pride whatsoever. I won't mention this in my eulogy, I promise.
He opened his maw wide, ready to chomp down on her with his massive teeth. Vivian suddenly realized her choice was to face a few moments of horror now, or a lifetime of knowing she'd failed again. Viv didn't give herself another chance to think about what she was doing. Her consciousness gathered back inside her body, and she felt the aching and pain and grotesque crawling across her skin. She accepted it and let it in. She let herself feel all the horrible paralysis and grating and chilling sensations until she could feel control spreading into the gigantic demon limb and mouth. Just before the mouth clamped down on Fear, it froze.
Hey, come on, I'm hungry here.
The demon muttered. The mouth kept trying to close around Fear's head, but Viv forced it to slow as much as she could. She clearly didn't have full control, and it kept slowly clamping.
This will be a great moment for the head to stop, her to pull it back, get it to face off, and say, well, I guess you'll have to starve.
Shut.
And boom.
She couldn't hold it for long. She then noticed once more the open, water-filled vault below her. I hope this hurts you a lot more than me, demon. She lifted her demon-warped foot and plunged it into the water. Zuphiathan shrieked out in rage and pain, and Viv did the same. It felt as though she had just stuck her foot into a pool of acid. The demon limbs both retracted back inside her, releasing fear. Viv was in agony, but held her foot in the water until the final head of the demon shrunk away. In a final cry, it yelled,
"Seems like we've got a bad connection. I'll call back later."
Damn you, Zuphiathan.
It vanished, and her arm returned to
Stop
normal,
making good jokes.
save for the crystal now warped under her jacket to stay stuck inside her arm. Viv yanked her leg out of the water and screamed in pain. Her leg had shifted back into her own demon form as Himenopoda and was sizzling from the holy water. Fear suddenly ran and slid on her knees across the ground right into Viv. She grabbed Jax's shirt and tried to find a dry part to wipe down her leg. It didn't help much. Fear was shaking.
I don't know what to do. It'll stop, but I don't know how to make it stop faster.
It's okay.
I do. Fear whipped her head around just in time to see a glowing sword thrust towards her head. Fear shoved Viv aside and leaned back herself, the blade slicing a burning cut across Fear's cheek.
Oh, crap.
The sword briefly pulled back. Wielding it was Clayton, who raised it to slice down into Fear's head.
Of course it's
I'd rather
Clayton.
let a traitor stay in agony, but if it means killing a demon and the demon queen, I'll let it go. He went for another swing, but before his weapon hit, a bat smashed against the back of his legs. Clayton yelled out and started falling to his knees, but Jax grabbed him by the back of the shirt and yanked him away from Fear and Viv, with surprising strength. Jax stepped between the girls and Clayton, who was quickly back on his feet. I don't know what's going on here, Jax, but throwing your hat in with demons, especially Fear herself, is a new level of stupid for you.
Just let us
We know what we're doing, Clayton. This is gonna be good for everyone, I swear. Jax tried to assert, despite clear uncertainty. Viv's pain was barely fading as she heard the clang of a sword against a bat. It felt like everything was crashing down around her. Had this been the absolute worst plan she'd ever had? Was this how it really ended? However Clayton had figured out what they were doing, it meant that everyone else in the coalition would know soon too.
Hey, all I can say is the plan was going perfectly until Zuphiathan stuck his big hippo head in.
Vivian just wanted to leave her body again, when suddenly a soothing hand fell on her shoulder. Her pain vanished. Her eyes had been clamped shut, trying to escape all her senses, but now a warm light illuminated her eyelids. She thought for a moment she'd just died and gone to heaven. When she opened her eyes, that notion didn't disappear. She was in a breezy, grassy field with a cloudless sky above. Fear was still next to her, and Jax behind her. He was panting, still in a battle stance, but Clayton was gone. In his place was a much more calming figure, one with white feathery wings stemming from his back. It's all right. You're all safe for the moment. Fear leapt to her feet and backed away as if she was seeing Zuphiathan all over again. Capri? What is this?
Capri.
What do you want? He responded with a somber smile. Relax, Arava. As strange as it may sound, it's actually good to see you again. Don't worry. I'm here to help.
What? Oh my god, this guy and his stories are so freaking good. It's crazy, man. Just crazy. I cannot wait for next week's.
I think that might be my new favorite drawing of the year, but even
Hell
if it's
yeah.
not, I hope you all enjoyed Fear of the Demon Hunters Episode 4. The next 2 episodes in this series are probably going to be community redraw episodes, and if you haven't submitted for that yet, I think the deadline was today, but you can have a few more days. I'm not going to work on that video next week. Gonna take some days off for Christmas. But before we wrap up this video, I want to read out some of the very nice 5-star reviews that have been left on Amazon for my book Vigilance, which is available now, and is full of great superhero-like stories and art. We've got one from Cole Vance. 5 stars, one of my most anticipated purchases of this year. I'll be the first to admit I had grown used to Christian Pearson doing pop culture related stuff on his art channel over on YouTube, so when it was announced that he would be working on an original series, separated from the pop culture videos and everything else he was doing, I wasn't sure what to think of it. But now that I have bared witness to Vigilance in its fullest, I am so glad that he decided to do it. It's made me excited for the next books that he'll do in the future, as well as any that may further flesh out the world of Vigilance. That's a very nice one. Thank you, Cole. We've got one
It's
from
good.
Brendan Bowes, that's 5 stars, says, great stories and love the YouTube channel Popcross Studios. We've also got one here from Haley, who says, I loved it. I absolutely loved the series on YouTube, and of course I love the book. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much,
Oh,
everyone.
yeah.
Probably read out a few more of those, so if you do get it, huge thank you for that and for supporting my work. And a 5-star review is just the cherry on top, and might get you a shout out on the channel. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is something I heard in a book this week that I've been listening to, called Letting Go by Dr. David R. Hawkins. And it talks about how if you're going through some kind of really negative experience, something that's bringing up a lot of negative emotions for you, a really good way to get through those emotions is to let yourself feel them, but focus on the feelings themselves, not all the thoughts and stories you have surrounding why those feelings are happening. Just focus on the actual feeling and sit with it. Let yourself feel it in its fullest. Focusing just on the feeling.
That's
It
good.
might be a bit uncomfortable at first and you might not want to feel this way, but by allowing yourself to feel it and not making up more stories around it, you can let it move through you and then dissipate. And you can go back to being in a much better mood, while knowing you haven't repressed anything that'll end up coming up later. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday.
Alright everyone, well that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of y'all next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.